All right, here we are, another Hot Topic Tuesday. It is the 11th of August, and today's subject matter. Wow, how do I hit this one? This one is, it came about, I'll share with you guys, it came about because we had a request to be able to talk with all of your admins at every office. And it was about what paperwork to be required. Talked with a couple of the admins, had a couple of questions to see how they would understand. And I realized that, wow, there was an issue that we've got here. And a lot of it is just understanding, not necessarily agency, but why we require the paperwork that we do. And in certain situations, what paperwork should we have? Not only that, but as from a point of agents, do we really know what we should be doing? So that's what today's going to bring about. So we are going to do a quick review and a reminder of some agency topics, because to get into the situational part of it, I want to be able to remind you of what is the key factors in agency to be able to help us walk into any situation and know how we should move forward, and under those circumstances, what paperwork should we put together. And by the way, there's not always this is the way. You've got to be able to use logical thinking, I'm going to put it that way, to be able to make the right decision regarding this. So that's what I want you to be able to know. So first thing that we have to know, Coldwell Banker Professionals and Century 21 Professionals are what we refer to as designated agency companies. And there are the two companies. So as we go through today, yes, we are the same under one big corporate umbrella, but those two companies are separate in regards to brokerage licenses. But we are a designated agency company. So let's break that down and share what that actually means. So with designated agency, here we know it is a company where only the licensee's broker and their named supervisory broker. Now that should make sense to you because we've all filled out the contract and we know who we are supposed to be putting in as a supervisory broker. In most cases, that is your branch manager. For some of you, you've been instructed to use Chris Hendricks as a supervisory broker. And of course, who's the designated agent? That's the individual who actually signs the contract. Now, from there, designated agency, what about the situation where the other party to the transaction is being represented by an affiliated licensee? So if I'm Coldwell Banker Professionals, any other Coldwell Banker Professional. If I'm Century 21 Professionals, it would be any other Century 21 Professionals agent. If we have those two parties coming together, here's what we know. The brokerage and all named supervisory brokers are considered disclosed, consensual dual agents. But again, remember, it's only the supervisory broker and the brokerage itself. So, with the faces that I can see, make sure you give me a funny look if that doesn't make sense, or if you're not, you got to say, Darwin, I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense to me. Otherwise, we're going to keep moving along. Now, then here becomes the biggie. If I represent, what do I owe that party who is known as the principal? What are the responsibilities that are carried with that? I give you the acronym of old car. Can anybody name them? Anybody want to take a stab at it? All right, here we go. Obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accountability, and reasonable care. That's what you owe an individual whom you represent. Be it a buyer or seller, we know those are the things. Now, that'll come up later. If nobody could tell me what our fiduciary responsibilities are, you shouldn't be worried about a whole bunch of other crap that goes along with that. Because if you don't know your responsibilities, other things don't matter. So just remember, old car. Jason, it looks like you're scratching those down. You all set? All right. Go back, or did you get it? I'm reading your lips, but not very well. You're good. All right. Here we go. So the supervisory broker, this is how it's described. It is an associate broker who's named in the agency agreement, listing or selling, to provide supervisory assistance. So obviously, your associate broker, managing broker, knows everything as they've got access to all files. Obviously, they represent everybody whom we bring in. So the supervisory broker helps one or more of the designated agents with the representation of clients. We know that's how it works. And here's the reason that what you see on paragraph 44 of the purchase agreement is so that clients are now advised that this is a dual agency situation from the brokerage perspective with a supervisory broker. That those entities are disclosed consensual dual agents of both the buyer and the seller. So it's right there on the purchase agreement. It's at that level. It's not down at our agent level. So there's the review of that. We all know what a seller's agent is. You represent the seller. That's it. Nobody else. Just you. And you owe your fiduciary duties to them. I believe that most of us remember and know what a sub-agent is. We don't do this in simple terms. We just don't do it. And I'll put a big old X through that, okay? We don't do sub-agency. We want to sever the tie between us, our company, and everybody else outside of our company. We want to sever that tie. That's the reason we don't want to offer sub-agency. We don't do it as a company. I won't confuse you with the one. No, I will. You want to know the one time I'd say it's okay? When it's a transaction between Coldwell Banker professionals and Century 21 professionals. If you truly understand agency, it would still be a sub-agent. And that would be a scenario where we would be okay with it because we know how we train our agents. We know what they're supposed to do. We know what you know what you're supposed to do. So that would be the one time it would truly be a sub-agent. It is not the two companies, when it comes to agency law, they're not together. They're two separate brokers. And that's the reason that case it would be a sub-agent and we would be all right with that. So then you have a buyer's agent. We know what that is. When you sign a buyer up with a contract, you represent that buyer. You are the designated agent for that buyer and you owe all of your fiduciary duties to them. So then here's what we know about a dual agent. A dual agent has to represent both parties to a transaction. The designated agent must represent the seller, must represent the buyer. Represent, 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 represent. You're not a dual agent unless if you're representing. There's a reason I'm emphasizing this. I'll give you clues when we get to our situations. But you can only be a dual agent when you represent both parties to the transaction. So then there's this thing called the transaction coordinator. Now, Who can describe what a transaction coordinator is? Anybody want to take a shot at it? Who has been a transaction coordinator? Really? None of you guys? Somebody's been a transaction coordinator. Maybe it's one of my watch parties with the office. Somebody in there has been a transaction coordinator. You guys are afraid to admit it. Nobody wants to define it. Has anybody actually read, as you're going through Form K agency disclosure with a buyer or seller, read what a transaction coordinator is?
Is it like being a notary?
Jason, thank you for stepping up to the plate. No. I'm waiting because I'm waiting for some. I don't know if I might not have any people using our transaction coordinator services because everybody knows or heard of it. Taylor Story is one of them. Taylor actually heads up, and what it is you can pay Taylor and her team to actually take care of closing a transaction out. Okay? She and her team are called transaction coordinators. And it has absolutely nothing, zero, to do with what we're talking about here as a transaction coordinator. And guys, this is where one of the biggest confusions in real estate exists. As much as I've been on this for years, look at where we're at within our company. You can only imagine how lost real estate agents are in regards to what a transaction coordinator is when it comes to an agency type that we have as a disclosure opportunity, a way that we could practice our business. So you have to separate the term transaction coordinator when we're dealing with normally unlicensed administrative help and what we're dealing with regarding agency types and how we can work. So a transaction coordinator, I'm going to give it here to you straight from Form K. A transaction coordinator is a licensee. First note, transaction coordinator is a licensee. They hold a real estate license. They are at least a salesperson license, if not an associate broker's license. It is a type of agency. It's a way that we can practice. Now, here's the next part of the statement as we break it down into segments. Who is not acting as an agent of either the seller or the buyer. Yet, they are providing services, the next part of it, to complete a real estate transaction. It is a licensee not representing either party, one side or the other, yet they're doing all of the services necessary to complete a real estate transaction. What's missing? Well, the key is because they're not an agent for either party, they owe no fiduciary duties to either party. We don't want, I want you guys to catch this and spread the word. We really don't see a situation where a transaction coordinator is going to be necessary. I want you to picture this. I didn't use implied agency today, but here's what here, I'm trying to hold it. I'll hold it from the top so that we got this transaction coordinator is the individual that sits on top of a 1-inch fence, having to balance themselves and not fall either way. So let's see. Here we go. You let me know when you understand what I'm saying. You're going to fall one way or the other, aren't you? You can say I don't represent either party, but what are you going to do? You're human. You're probably going to represent one party or the other. Now, with all of those reminders and that one real clear understanding of what a transaction coordinator actually is, let's move forward with the final option, which is none of the above. Look, guys, I've been at this since 1995 when they gave us this disclosure form. I've never seen a none of the above. I've rarely seen transaction coordinator, and then I actually experienced with one of my agents where I decided this is dumb. Nobody knows how to be a transaction coordinator. They don't even understand what it means, let alone what can I and can I not do. Because I don't represent either party yet, I'm providing all the services necessary to be able to close a real estate transaction. I want to remind you that on the listing agreement, that here's what it says. We will become a dual agent when we represent both parties. We will redisclose when that happens. Everybody good there? Then we have, for the buyer representation agreement, and many of you have not actually considered this, but what happens when I represent two buyers and a house comes on the market that both buyers want to see it, should see it? This says I can do it. And what if both buyers then decide they both like the house and want to make an offer? This says we can do it as agents and tells them what will happen if we have that. You never considered, if you're in this business long enough and doing any business at all, you will run into that. It's not common, but it will happen as a minimum that you have two buyers that should see the same house. Not as common to have both of them like it and both want to write an offer. Be prepared. But then it says conflict of interest as a seller. We know that as a designated agent representing the seller and the buyer, we become a dual agent, we have to redisclose. And I believe that the best document for us to be able to use is this one. It's in the MAR library. I believe it's in our packages, the buyer package, where it should be dual agency agreement. It's not really an agreement, it's the redisclosure. The reason, more than anything else, that I like that we use this document is because it's for one property. You see, if I went and redisclosed and used the agency disclosure, I just redisclosed to both parties. I no longer represent them as individuals. I represent them as a dual agent. Technically, if the deal were to fall apart, what would I have to do? Redisclose. This one is for that one property. If it falls apart, I still have all of my paperwork correct and in place. Okay. Now, there's a whole lot there that I'm going through with the assumption that you guys really understand this. So if you don't, well, check session 2 of the business development series where we go into agency. So here we go. Let's get into our first situation. And this is where group involvement comes through. And I'm okay if you use the chat room to be able to make that happen. First situation. It's where we're dealing with both sides of the transaction. You have a listing contract where you are the designated agent of the seller. An unrepresented buyer wants to offer on your listing. They just came out of the clear blue. You don't know them from a hill of beans. What do? Here, I'll tell you what. Let me give you options. This was supposed to be a little quiz, and it didn't work out, so it's not on. I can't pop it up. So Do you A, sign the buyer an agency contract, disclose dual agency to all parties? That's A. Do you B, disclose to the buyer in writing that you are a seller's agent and write up the offer? Or do you C, refer the buyer to someone in the office to avoid dual agency? So I've got an A, a B, an A. Disclose to the seller first, old car, which actually not a bad answer, but we would have already done that because we already have the listing, but a good answer. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? This is a lot more fun when you guys participate. Otherwise, you're just sitting back and waiting for Darwin to tell you the answer. What is the best answer? Sign a buyer agency contract, disclose dual agency. Is that what we should do? Come on, guys, don't remain in silence. I got one head shaking. Yes. That is one way that it could be done. But is it the best answer?
For me, it is.
Okay. How about B was disclose to the buyer in writing that you are a seller's agent and write up the offer? Yeah, see, guys, this is why we do this. You guys don't know the actual answer. And I'm okay with that because we're going, what's the best way? What I want you to know is this then. Think of this with our current situation. Is simply because I have both sides, and this is where you guys can now just give a simple answer, yes or no. Is because I have both sides, is it automatically dual agency?
No, it's not automatically a dual agency because you have no relationship to the person who just walked into the property. So you have
You're really
no
giving a
relationship
great
with the
answer for
seller.
all of it.
Pardon?
Mhm. You're giving a great answer for all of it. And it's the part, what did you say about the buyer? I have
You
no.
you don't know this person from a hole in the wall.
Why then, and this is where Lydia, I was saying that you're kind of leading everything up to the correct answer, the best answer. If I don't know this person from a hole in the wall, why would I take and diminish what I owe my client? Diminish what I owe them by signing this buyer up as a buyer's representative and now having to practice dual agency. We're good with that. We're okay with dual agency. But why would we diminish the relationship that we have with a client already to bring somebody else in? The key, we do not need to represent both parties, and we do not need to become dual agents simply because we have both sides. Whom do you represent? And let me ask you this to kind of clear it a little bit further. Can you force a buyer to be represented? No. Guys, let's flip the coin. The other side of it. Can you force a for sale by owner to be represented? The answer is no. Why would we treat a buyer any different than we would if we were a seller? Yeah, Katie, you just hit what I was throwing out there, and that is, what if it's the other side? Nothing's different. I'm representing the buyer. I go to a FSBO. Matter of fact, let's flip this. So, by the way, the best answer with this situation as I provided it, and then actually we'll flip the coin and take it a little bit further in just a moment. The best answer would be disclose to the buyer in writing that you are seller's agent and write up the offer. And I do not do a buyer agency contract. I do not represent the buyer. I check off, I am a seller's agent. Designated agency company. Sign here, buyer. Because I am telling the buyer I am a seller's agent. Everybody good there? All right.
So the
Here we
only
go.
question the only discussion I want to have here now is what happens to the compensation?
Why are you worried about money?
But you don't have a relationship with the buyer. You haven't signed a contract with the buyer. So,
Gosh, well, Lydia, it's a great question. And actually, I hadn't thought about it. I've talked about it a lot, but I've talked about it with why do we want to get a full compensation when we take a listing of 6%? It's for what Lydia just talked about. I want to get paid for both sides of the transaction. I don't actually then have to worry about it if I represent only the seller because they're paying the full compensation. So when you actually go back and look at the listing contract, you'll see it says, we get paid 6%. Now, if somebody else gets involved, here's what it's going to be. Okay? Did that answer that question for you, Lydia?
yeah, and I'm still like worried about it.
Yeah, no need
Because
to worry.
no, I'm not worried. Like, if I remember what that section says, it says 3% to the person who brings the buyer agent. But you're saying because we said we want 6, whoever brings the buyer, if we bring the buyer without having signed the buyer's contract, we will still get 6.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep, you got it. You got it. And by the way, that's been a common one since this, what do we call it? The settlement came out. That's when it kind of became real clear. So yes. Now here's the issue, because I've talked about this one, but we have to be concerned whenever we have one where we take only 3%. Can we? Should we? When the seller just doesn't get it? Yes. And then we said, look, seller, I can do 3%, but here's what I want to prepare you for. This is just the way that it works now because the buyer doesn't have money to pull out of their pocket. They're going to ask you to pay it through their offer. I just want you to know that that's what it's going to be. The problem is, if we were to sign a 3% and then it's 0-0 for transaction coordinator and offered to the buyer's agent, what must we now do to be compensated for the buyer side? We're going to have to, and guys, this is the situational part of it. If we want to get paid for the buyer side, we've now got to sign the buyer up with the buyer's agency contract. That's it. John just put it in there in the chat section. We've got to get a buyer agency contract. Well, now what did the seller forced us to do that? We only agreed to 3, but now it's 6. Not to mention it's dual agency because I had to have a contract signed. Tony, do I got you spinning there a little bit, buddy? It's but and this is why I say just keep it simple. You represent them. Now it's dual agency. It's just the direction that we've got to take it, because if I'm going to, and by the way, I should emphasize this: if I'm going to receive compensation for the buyer side. And I only signed a seller for 3. I have to have a contract that says you're going to pay me. And the only contract we have for that is a buyer representation contract. If you represent the buyer, you represent the seller, you are now a dual agent. Okay? So again, as a company, we're good with dual agency. We just don't want to do it. And yeah, guys, we're saying avoid dual agency at all costs. Cliff, thank you for stepping out there. Look, I'm good with it, but do it right. Because here's what we could do, and this was one of the first situation I threw out, was an option was refer the buyer to someone else in the office so you avoid dual agency. Why give up the money? What did you gain by sending that person somewhere else? Whatever information you gain from that buyer, you still have to hold confidential if you represented them. So here's the thing, I want you to catch this. They called you up, said, I want to see the house. You said, okay, I'll show it to you. They walk through, they go, oh, we love it, we want to buy it. Did they share anything about their timing, their finances, why they're moving, when they got to move? Did you disclose that you represent the seller? Did you disclose that you represent the seller in writing? Did you do that before you gained that confidential information? And if you're saying yes, liars. I have, thanks, Tony. I was looking for you to give that. Guys, we don't do that. When do we get, with buyers now we're doing it right. But even then we gained a whole lot of confidential information. Think of the seller. When are we having a seller actually sign an agency disclosure? And when did we actually tell them that we're here representing them? When they said, yes, you're my agent. Then you finally disclosed. And you finally disclosed in writing. Prior to that, you were representing them, they just didn't know it. And it's called implied agency. They were giving you all of this information because they were thinking that you were representing them. Guys, dual agency is fine. Just do it right. Just do it right. Let's see. I'm not here to convince you on that one today. That's another day. All right. Let's go to this next situation. This is an often key one, because here's where, Katie, you threw this out. You got both sides. We're dealing with both sides. You have a buyer representation contract as a designated agent. You represent the buyer. You find a for sale by owner for this buyer. I'll give you options. You write it up, get a one-party agreement with the seller so we have our compensation set up. That's option A. Option B, compensation is already set through the buyer agency contact, so just write it up and check off the correct boxes on the PA. Nothing else is necessary. Or C, what the heck, I'm already set with the buyer, so I write it up, have the seller sign the agency disclosure showing that I'm a buyer's agent. Well, here's the last one. I'm now a dual agent and I sign the dual agency agreement. How many of you are going, oh man, that's clear as mud. I have my, whoa. So what do you think, guys? A, B, C, or D? I got one B. Commission, but you can use it for the seller. Okay, I go with that. There's another B. Nobody else is really wanting to participate today. I don't know if it's A, what's a one-party agreement? I like that, Katie. Thank you. All right. Well, let's discuss it. What's different in this from the last one?
For
Really?
sale by owner.
Okay. So outside of that, you know what we did, and Katie set us up for this. We flipped the coin over, now it's on the other side. I have a client who I've been representing, and somebody else comes along and says, I want to play. I don't represent them. I don't know them from, as Enid, we put it, the hole in the wall, right? Lydia, there. Sorry, Lydia, I forgot your name for a second.
I was going to help you, and I noticed you said Enid.
Yeah. I'm like, and I've done that for you two for a long time. So Lydia brought it up. I don't know this person from a hole in the wall. The only thing we did is flip the buyer and the seller. Anybody ever represent a buyer and then find them a FSBO or an unlisted property? What did you do? The scenario is the same. But here's the question now. Has anybody ever sold a for sale by owner and only took the 3% that you got from the buyer? And by the way, if I had our whole group on here, I would say that most producers absolutely have had that. And they only got paid for one side. But really, why shouldn't we get paid for both?
Well, I think with the FSBO, they're going to be less likely to agree to 6. That's one thing. But if I'm calling on like expireds or just off property, like like circle prospecting, um, I'm just approaching the conversation, letting them know that I have a buyer in the area and seeing if they're, ready to relist or ready to sell. So then would we just write up the listing agreement at that point? We'd obviously have to show it to our buyer after it's already listed, right? That's the best way to go. So then it stays the same scenario. Is that right?
Katie, I love having you around. So let's switch it. It's an expired. Does it change anything? Katie already gave some, well, what could we? Should we do this? It's interesting because I've got you thinking in ways that you've not thought before. What's the difference between a for sale by owner and expired? You already have the buyer. Nothing. The only difference is and Katie, my speaker's over here. That's why I keep doing that. Katie brought up the scenario. An expired or a withdrawn was already prepared to pay 6%. The FSBO is trying to say, look, I don't want to pay anybody anything. And we're okay with that. And I think that just means we're not salespeople. But now's where you've got to take a little bit of what we discussed last week. And if you weren't with me last week, ooh, boy, that was a great subject. We were probably 50, 60 people total between the office watch parties, and those were online because there was, I think 38 was the high number I saw in participating last week. Go back to the HRC Agent Development channel and watch that if you haven't, because it's a change in our mindset. So if I can follow me with this, because again, Katie flipped a coin on us. This is a FSBO. If we can sign a buyer up for 6, or if I have both sides, we'll do 5, right? Why couldn't I sign a buyer up that if I found an off-market property, you owe me 5%? Why couldn't I do that? Because you haven't got the proper verbiage, but I would tell you, you should find that in the clauses. Okay? And if you really want to know or discuss that, I'll tell you what, I've thrown this idea, this concept out since 1995. when we started representing buyers in the state of Michigan, pretty much the United States. Very few have ever done it. Flip the coin. The answer becomes the same. It's just for the opposite parties. Everybody set with that one? Okay. All right. Let's go to this next scenario. Come on. I'm frozen. Only on my PowerPoint. There we go. All right. So I left this one really generic. Somebody comes to you to say, hey, listen, I put a deal together here. I just need someone to be able to process it, put it on paperwork, and get it closed. That could be a buyer coming to you on a seller or a seller coming to you on a buyer. I've left it very generic, but let's do this. Your good friend comes to you and says, hey, I'm buying a house up on this little lake in Lapeer. And I've got everything negotiated. It's all set. Terms are, I just need somebody to take what we've agreed upon, put it on paper, get it closed. What do you do? Go ahead. Who's going to commit? How about this? What have you done in the past? Okay, Debbie says, well, I'm going to charge a 3% commission. I like that. That's a good start. Oh, you have been listening. Okay, transaction coordinator. So our Livonia Watch Party says be a transaction coordinator with a commission. I gave you a hint as what we'd really prefer that you stay away from being. We don't want you to be a transaction coordinator. We don't want you to be a transaction coordinator. Let me demonstrate that again. Let me know when you got my message. You are going to be implying one way or the other, I'm either a seller's agent or I'm a buyer's agent. It's dip. And why, guys? Why be a transaction coordinator? You're doing all of the same stuff. You're doing everything that you would do if you represented the buyer or the seller. Why would you be a transaction coordinator? By the way, I'm throwing it out there because I want you to think. I'll tell you why. Because the real estate industry has been programmed that with that situation, that's what you are. Because you're only coordinating the transaction. It has nothing to do with that. A transaction coordinator is a real estate licensee who performs all of the services to be able to close a transaction while not representing either party. Therefore, they owe no fiduciary responsibilities. That's the only difference. And you don't even know what your fiduciary duties are. You can't tell me. Why would you become a transaction coordinator? By the way, that's just me being loving. Don't hate me because I called you out. But nobody could tell me what your fiduciary duties were in the beginning. And if that's the only thing that's different, is you don't owe what you don't know you owe, why would you be a transaction coordinator? And here's the other part. I'll pick on my good friend Cliff. Cliff and I went to different high schools together. He graduated in 1940, and I was in 1980. Wishful thinking. Actually, it was I graduated in 78. I guess I should have went further out. Anyway, here's the key. Cliff and I are really good friends. Matter of fact, I'm gonna exaggerate this. I've sold 3 houses for Cliff. I've sold him 4 houses. Cliff comes to me and says, "Hey, Darwin, I found this property up on a little lake north of Lapeer. I want to buy it. I've already got everything negotiated, settled with this seller that you have no idea who they are. All I need you to do is put it on paper and get it closed." And I'm going to be a transaction coordinator? I don't think so. The only reason I'll ever meet this seller is because I got to get him to sign something. And today, you may never meet him until closing. In these types of scenarios, I'm not going to represent Cliff. If I asked you, guys, I'm going to represent Cliff. Just do it openly. If you know both parties, represent both and become dual agent. Just do it correctly. And I want you to think of this, if I didn't know, and this person just walked into the office and said, "Hey, here's a situation, I'll make sure you get paid." You with me? Represent them. How else are you going to get paid? So let me throw this to you. Are you ready? Same scenario, but you went, Darwin doesn't know what he's talking about. He's full of crap. Okay? And you decide you're going to be a transaction coordinator. Obviously, we know we must disclose to all parties. Therefore, there's a agency disclosure form K for the buyer. There's an agency disclosure form for the seller. Both are checked off that I am a transaction coordinator. Now, how do you get paid? What's your agreement you're going to use so that you get paid? And you can't tell me a listing contract or a buyer contract because both of those say that you represent the seller. So what form are you going to use? Houston, we have a problem. Well, Darwin, it's going to put it right on the purchase agreement. It says the seller is going to put it. Oop, Cliff, we were right on the same mode right there. Yep. And what entitles you to have anybody pay you? Certainly not the purchase agreement. What agreement do you have that says, what agreement do you have available to you that says when you are a transaction coordinator, this person or this person is the one responsible for paying you? Guys, you haven't had it. That's a problem, isn't it? It kind of tells you where we as a company really think we should be with a transaction coordinator. We don't think you should do it. And if you ever get to that point where you think you should, talk to your manager. By the way, some of you may have branch managers that are going, "Yeah, Darwin's full of crap." That's okay. We haven't written the rule. It's not in paper that says you cannot do a transaction coordinator. But you who are listening are more understanding of the why and the why not. And I will share with you that if, capital IF, bold, underlined, if you must be a transaction coordinator, talk to your branch manager, but make sure you call and give me the situation that required it, because I'd like to share it with everybody else.
So Darwin, I have a question. So in a hypothetical situation, let's say that everybody agreed that you're going to work with them, and then you wrote into the contract that they will both pay you 3 and 3, and they agreed to it in the contract. I know you're still
when you say the contract, the purchase agreement?
Yeah.
Okay. Great
So
question.
everybody, so in the purchase agreement, that these people call you, say, let's do this deal for me. You write it into the contract that they're going to pay you 3 and 3. So can't you do that?
This is the part that, see, this is why it's so good when I get you guys going, you actually participate fully like this. I want you to think about that. So our situation was brought to us in such a way we never had to show the house, right? So we never had to sign an agency disclosure and a buyer representation contract, which we would if we'd have had to do if we were following the settlement in what will be Michigan law sometime in the near future. Prior to showing the home, prior to touring a home with a buyer, the government's forcing them to sign a contract with us.
Right.
That's how we get paid by the buyer. But we didn't get that, and we didn't get one from the seller. So I'm coming back, and Lydia, I think I'll answer your question directly, but I want you to think about this. What gave you the right to collect any compensation? No
Well,
contract.
in my mind, I am doing them a service by filling in this paperwork and
Yep.
processing it for them. So that's why my question is, if I put it in the contract and they both agree and sign it, that they're going to pay me 3 and 3, as a transaction coordinator, what's wrong with that? I know I don't have any agreement from, they haven't signed
That's
an agency agreement. So you're saying the agency agreement is what binds them to me to pay a contract?
well, the agency contract,
Right.
be it listing or buyer, is what creates the requirement that they pay us.
Got it.
So
But after
prior,
the fact, but given that we didn't have either one of those two
okay,
things, for me, the person in the purchase agreement, they both agreed, because we had a conversation about it, that they will
yeah,
pay me.
okay. So then what agreement are you going to sign between you and them that says I get paid X percent?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we put it in the purchase agreement and they both
What?
sign
Okay,
it, that
I'm
becomes a
going to have you
binding
pause for a
contract.
second. I'm going to have
What?
you pause for a second.
Okay.
What contract? And then if you don't catch it, I'll bring it to you. Somebody actually kind of put it out there already. What contract exists that says that the buyer or the seller owes us money? There isn't one. Who, and here's the answer to Lydia where you were going with this, and it's a common misunderstanding. Are we a party to the purchase agreement? And the answer is no. We are not a party to the purchase agreement. We as a brokerage are not a party to the purchase agreement. So if they put it on there, that's kind of like a disclosure to everybody that they're going to pay us, and it's a verbal contract. Could they welch on that? Could they walk away on that? Yep. Pretty easily, because there's nothing that says that we get paid. As a matter of fact, with the terms of the settlement, we couldn't collect anything from the buyer.
Okay, so what you're saying is we just have a purchase agreement that says they're going to pay, but there's no behind the scenes paperwork really that says they owe us any money if we close.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. And that's, by the way, you guys ought to know me well enough by now. I've always said that if you ever need to fish because you haven't got time to learn how to fish, that's where you got to let me know, because I want my whole mode of coaching and teaching you is to get you to think, wow, I haven't thought of that before. Well, if this, then this. It's kind of the logic aspect. See, if I just give you the answers, then you got the answer for that one scenario. What we've been doing today, you can take and start processing all the different situations. And with your particular situation, come up with what may be the best way for you to move forward with it. But we need to know What's the only way that we get guaranteed compensation? We have a contract, somebody's paying us. We have a listing contract, we have a buyer contract. And then I want you to think of this, because this is something that I threw out way back when we first started talking because of the terms of the settlement. Well, I want you to help me. I'll even make sure that you get paid, but I don't want you to represent me. Yeah, Cliff, thank you. I needed somebody else to make that look with me. But that's not logical. Because they're going to have to sign something that says they're going to pay me. They said, I'll pay you. Sounds like I got to be represented. Why would somebody say, I'll pay you, but I don't want you to be I don't want you to represent me? I'll make a commitment to you, but I don't want you to represent me. That's illogical. And yet, that's potentially what somebody would tell you. If they thought they should, I mean, here, give somebody, I can either represent you or I can be a transaction coordinator and provide all the services without being able to advise you, guide you, protect you, be confidential in regards to the information you're. Guys, if we really understand it. Yeah. Oh, hey, Tony, thank you. Because I forgot I was going to go back to that. I will not sign a contract. Can you work with them? No, because you won't get paid. How much can we get from a buyer? Whatever they signed an agreement for. If there's no agreement, you can't be paid. Are you going to work with them? Nope. Boy, I'll tell you, I'm hoping I'm breaking down a lot of the. We've talked a lot more situations than what I put on the screen. Because there's just another situation. You sit down with a buyer, I'm going to do all these things for you, and the only thing I need to know is I'm going to represent you, and then you got to sign an agreement because the government won't allow us to show you homes. You have to sign an agreement before I can even show you homes. That's what the government did for you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. Well, I don't want a contract saying I got to pay you. Well, then you can go somewhere else and somebody else can work for nothing. Either that or breaking the I hate to say law yet, but it will be. It's terms of the settlement because it's not a law. It's terms of the settlement. It's what the government forced us to do. And if somebody else wants to go out and do that without a contract, then they're breaking terms and soon will be violating law. Would somebody do that? Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of people that don't have any ethics. I mean, it only took 40 hours to get a license and pass that test. And yep, Cliff just hit it. Look, there's a reason our contract is signed the way, or is done the way it is. Because I can sign it for one day for the one property I show them. Yeah, but what if they buy it 30 days later? They owe me a commission. Because I do 6 months as far as that part where if you buy this home within 6 months, I get paid. And yes, it will stand up in a court of law. Got to be worth our while to be able to pursue. Everybody good? I got a lot of thinking that's going on here today. Whoa. Okay, it's 12:59. I just noticed that. Let me throw one other one to you. It really doesn't change anything. Open house. You are the listing agent holding this house open. Somebody walks in the door. You don't know them from a hill of beans. They want to buy the house. Have you write it up. Simple answer. I don't know them. Represent the seller. Disclose to the buyer that you represent the seller, seller's agent. They sign purchase agreement. You've told, look, because I do represent the seller, don't tell me anything you don't want the seller to know, yeah. But I want to make sure that I'm able to do business with you and have earned your provided such great services that you would refer me to all the people that you know. But you can't represent them. But look, you only have 4 weeks that you got to stay away from doing anything that would imply that you represent them. And I was hoping that we'd have more time to be able to talk about what experiences you have had and how you proceeded with it. All right. That's what I had for you today. We got through it quick. It's 1 o'clock. As always, guys, let me know what you got coming up. The end of the month, what do we have? 2 weeks, I believe it is. I've got Brian Westron, who is the Mar Legal Counsel, going to be coming on with us. And he's going to be talking about all the fun stuff that they're getting in on the Mar Legal hotline regarding seller's disclosure. And hopefully he'll have time for us to be able to answer any other questions that you might want to have a discussion with. So we are blessed and fortunate to be able to have him coming in. So with that, guys, I say thank you. Have a great one. And we'll end it there. If you want to hang out because you got additional questions or you want clarification, you guys let me know. I'll hang out here for a little bit if you got that. That way it's officially ended. We'll see if anybody's got any additional stuff. Hit me, Cliff. Go ahead. You're off mute. There must be something you're thinking there.
Okay. If they know, if the buyer knows, of course, that you have representation of the sellers, and the sellers are aware that they're fully expecting to pay 6% or 5% in the case that I bring the buyer.
Yep.
I merely represent and always represent the sellers. And in the case that I write it up and it sticks, then I bring the 5% home.
I would do it that way. But let me give you another scenario to that. So the buyer that comes along is, I'm going to make it really obvious. It's your nephew that you're the godfather for. You change this kid's diapers. You hang out with him playing golf. He's man, you two talk once a week minimum. I'll throw this one because I'm doing this for my nephew. You officiated his ceremony. I'm doing that this weekend for marrying his bride. Okay, you know where I'm at, right? Okay, so this guy wants to buy your listing. You still representing the seller only? I created it as easy as possible. Because here's where I got you, Cliff. You're going, Cliff and I have done this a lot. So where it's kind of like, I'm going to say I got him because he knows the answer he wants to go with, but he also knows well enough that it's like, crap. Can I truly represent only the seller when I have that relationship with my nephew?
It would have to then be dual agency. And see, it's just that I believe, in all honesty, that I can tell my nephew, listen, I can't talk to you about real estate. You can take everything into consideration that I've advised in the past. But as regard to this property, I represent the sellers. And if you would like to buy it, sign here, 3 copies, press hard.
All right. I'll take it further. I'll see how far I have to take this. So here's what you know. Thanks, Livonia. You know that he has he makes $500,000 a year. He's got cash. You also know that he just relocated and the company is going to want him here next week. You know this. You're going to tell me that you won't advise the seller of that information?
I would go dual agency and walk the tightrope.
There you go. And that's where I want it. It's Cliff, you're spot on. I want to represent one party as long as I'm humanly capable of doing so. But There are going to be circumstances where I can't. And, you know, when I used the scenario earlier about selling you for and actually selling 3 for you, that was an actual situation. That was previous client of mine. Do I have previous information that I cannot disclose?
Of course.
Absolutely. So to an extent, I'm already in a dual agency situation because of what I did in previous time. And then, I mean, here's the really obvious one. If I didn't get you there, Cliff, I had you with another one. You represent a seller, and then you want to buy the house. Now it's like, wait a minute. Now you've totally flipped it. I should have never have actually listed the house. Correct. But if something happened after you've listed the house and they said, Cliff, why don't you buy it? Well, that's when I'm going to make some additional disclosures. It's the reason we say buyer is a licensed agent in the state of Michigan, and I would add, is purchasing this house with the intent to make a profit. And it's right on the purchase agreement. But I've had people where they said, I'm going to be able to represent myself and my client also, be it a buyer or a seller. It's like, no, you can't. No. You honestly think that you're not going to take advantage of the buyer? That you're going to disclose everything about that? No. And oh, by the way, here was one I should have shared with the whole group. And maybe I'll just leave this whole recording. I'll post the whole recording for everyone. The aspect of, I just drew a brain fart here. I mean,
Well, how about liability? Throw that in there.
Yeah, well, that's the other part of it. Oh my gosh, where was I going with that thought? I am literally having a complete cranial flatulation moment.
It'll come back.
It'll come back to me. Share something else with me. Because it was like, oh, we were talking about representing yourself and someone else who just can't, you can't do it. Oh, I know what it was. I know what it was. I knew it would come back. Here we go. Can I be a buyer or seller's agent and then disclose that I'm a transaction coordinator to the other party? I disclose that I'm a buyer or seller agent, and then on the opposite side, I'm telling the buyer or the seller I don't represent that I'm actually a transaction coordinator. Tony's got the answer. You are correct. Nope. Because you're already either a buyer's agent or a seller's agent. You're already there. So what am I disclosing to the other party? That I am a buyer's agent or I am a seller's agent. I can't be a transaction coordinator. We've seen that one. Interesting stuff, right? All right. Well, anybody got anything else then? Tony's got the thumbs up.
I'd like to share something really quick. I have a property listed and a realtor came in with an offer and we had no prior discussion, and he put his purchase agreement and listed that the seller pay him 4%.
Say that again.
He asked for 4%.
Well, I'll tell you, the verbiage I gave you for the buyer that you could put into the contract should be in clauses. You know, it would say, if I sell an unlisted property, I get paid this. If I find a for sale by owner, I get paid this. Otherwise, I get paid this. Any listed property, 3%, for sale by owner, 4%. Any other property that I find unlisted is 5%.
The only reason I can believe that he would do that is he has a contract for 4% from that particular buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And I casually mentioned that he might be having an adverse effect on his offer because my seller's perception of that is not a very good one. And my seller happens to care about me.
So Cliff, whoops. I think I still got you. Okay.
Yep.
I want you to watch last week's HTT. You weren't with me, were you?
No.
Okay. So I threw this one out to the entire group last week, and hopefully I come back up here.
Look like it's all right.
My camera is not wanting. All right. Bum, 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 bum. Well, let's see. Am I flashing off and on to you?
No, we got HRC logo. That's okay.
All right. So I'm going to keep talking and see if I can pull this up here.
There you go.
So what I had was working with a buyer, and it's my other monitor. That's what I'm running into. It's just flickering on my own side. And with this buyer, we found a house, wrote an offer, and we needed 5% concessions because it was non-homesteaded. It was Ferndale. So we needed something. And on top of it, obviously, we're asking him to pay my compensation. And the seller says, okay, well, and we went $10,000 above his asking price. So oh, by the way, he's been on the market for like 90 plus days. I think it was 104 or something like that. So, and he's already done a price adjustment. We went back to his original asking price, asked him to pay the 5% and pay my compensation. Well, he and the agent came back and said, well, we'll go ahead and we'll take the $295. We'll pay the concessions, which was like he was at his $285, but I won't pay their compensation. I took it back to the buyer and said, guys, we're at a point where we're just falling short because they don't want to pay the compensation. I hit them directly with it. Didn't do no sales, didn't, change anything. Just, he says, well, we can't do it. So we moved on to the next house. The next house, after about a 25-minute conversation of building rapport, I'll call it, the agent says, well, listen, we're really well set. All we've got to do is you and I take 2.25% instead of 3%. Now, the short story is I said, no, I can't do that. Of which she was, matter of fact, quote, I can't believe that you would say no to this. Somebody with your experience and productivity, I've never heard it from anybody before. And I mean, there was a lot of additional conversation. I just simply gave her this. I said, if you and your seller feel it's necessary to reject our offer, I understand. And if you feel that you have to counter stating that he'll only pay my 2.25, I understand, but bring it back to me on paper. So they did. And I called my buyer and I said, guys, good news, bad news. Good news is they've accepted all of our terms. And the bad news is, but we're $2,250 off. And I can quote my buyer. He says, is that all? I said, yeah, if we're willing to come up with another $2,250, we're golden. You bought a house. He said, I'm good with that. Honey, are you good with that? Yeah, I'm good with that. I said, let me explain what they did. And he said, so then what do we got to do? I said, well, we're going to go back with another $2,500 because we got to truly compensate for the addition. and you'll buy a house. Now, she didn't go, Conley, you are brilliant, but I got paid my full 3%, or will when we get it closed. And she accepted 2.25. And oh, by the way, she still had to pay the broker compliance fee.
Very good.
The seller said no, 2.25 and no broker compliance fee. Well, I'm getting my broker compliance fee plus the full 3%. And here was the reason, and this is the whole part that I wanted to express to it. It's a mindset. Why would I negotiate my compensation as part of the purchase agreement? I've already negotiated it with the buyer. The buyer's now negotiating with the seller. And the buyer needs that money somewhere. So for me, it was simple. I just called the mortgage company and say, I know we're at the top of the our qualification, but can we do 301.5? She said, yep, you're good with that house. We can do that. I said, I need an updated pre-approval letter. Wrote the purchase agreement up for 301.5, still getting 4% in concessions and paying my 3% compensation. Why? I was working with a good agent who understood, seller, you're still getting the amount of money that you want. The buyer just gave you the money so that they can pay their agent. So it's a mindset. It's a shift in how we should be thinking. But that was what that was the hot topic, and it was a good one because, like I say, there was 38 sign-ins, and all the other folks would be sitting around in the watch party with the new offices. So, all right,
Yeah.
good stuff. Anybody else got anything? Otherwise, I'm sure there's a whole lot of people that are just hanging on and listening in the background because you never know what you're gonna learn. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Throw things
Thank
at
you,
me.
Darwin.
Let me know what you're running into, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome, buddy. Talk to you.